composition of your mind is fleeting, thoughtless with its time. Who knows what you mean to convey? When lilacs last and front yards bloom, you were not cruel, you were not soon, but just as quickly as they grow, they went away. 'Cause finding new lovers like building a castle in Spain. The only thing it can bring you is the way to feel the pain. Told you something in confidence, received the same in vain. 'Cause finding new love was like building a castle in Spain. It surprises me, after 28 years on the planet, I'm still learning new idioms. One for doing the impossible is building castles in Spain. But when I first heard this beautiful, mystical, searching for love song by today's guest, Hector Jenkins, I wondered whether it was some weird metaphor he had constructed himself. But even though he did not invent the expression castles in Spain, there's just so much wonderful craftsmanship on his debut record, Don't Let Me Grow Up, which I've been listening to a lot the past couple days. Hector is also a film student, so an overall very artistic person. So I'm curious what he has to say about the ideas that go into this record. Is it a concept album? What are his favorite songs? And how does he exist in the world more broadly as a student of music and film as an artistic mind? Let's find out with my talk with Hector Jenkins. So I'm joined today by Hector Jenkins. Hector, you put out your debut record last year. It's called Don't Let Me Grow Up. Now that's one of the names of the songs on the record, but it could suggest a concept album. So let me ask, are the songs about a sort of general vision of not growing up, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think it's very much from a time period where I was really struggling with this idea of becoming an adult and entering the world. I recorded the record in the last few months before I moved away from home for the first time, and I wrote a lot of the songs within a year of that time. And I think the sort of cohesion of the record is that all of the songs have this real feeling of doubt and sort of wondering what the next step in life is going to be, while trying to be relatively optimistic about where things are headed. Um, yeah, so there definitely is cohesion there.
Yeah, so just to continue on that, because if there is cohesion, it's subtle. A lot of the songs are love songs. What are some examples of songs on the record that show that doubt?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is um, Cabin Fever, which is, I guess, sort of my COVID song to some extent, but it's more about that period of time where everything felt like it had ended and there was sort of nothing left. And I think that one has a lot of doubt in it and a lot of sort of wondering if anything can ever be the way it was before. But I think the biggest one that I always go to is Insomnia, um, because it's written very much from a place of feeling stuck in one place and feeling like what's next isn't necessarily going to be what is needed to move forward in a healthy way. But yeah, I think that all the songs have little glimpses of that in there. Um, and then on a more the cohesion level again, I think there's a lot of nostalgia mixed into a lot of the songs, especially in "Do You Love Me," but also um, in the song "Elbow Lake," which is one of my favorites off the record. It's yeah, it's sort of just about my childhood and the places that I spent a lot of my time in childhood.
So I also wanted to know a bit about your sound because it does sound like for the most part you're sticking to the core rock instruments, guitar, percussion. Yet a lot of the songs all sound quite different. So Castles in Spain has this sort of glistening, almost wall of sound thing going on. Insomnia starts out sounding like minimalist folk, and then it gets really weird. Do you have any comments on creating your musical sound?
Yeah, so it was the first time I'd ever been in a studio as sort of a producer. I produced the record alongside my friend Dylan Lodge, who is instrumental in a lot of the sort of technical sound elements. And I think that really going into it, I I've done a lot of recording with other people, and I've done a lot of sort of playing live with people, and I think that one of the biggest issues that people run into and that I've run into is that all your songs start to sound the same because when you write a song, you're not thinking about that aspect of it. And when we got into the studio, it was a lot of sitting down with Dylan and saying, how can we make this song feel different? How can we make this song feel like its own unique thing? With Insomnia specifically, we brought in a lap steel slide guitar, and that was sort of the biggest addition to the song. But the other thing that I found really helpful throughout the record was switching up the harmonies and trying to do interesting things with the harmonies that were different from song to song, but then also having different people singing on the record. Um, and yeah, on Castles in Spain, I think that was one of the most fun ones to record because we got to bring my good friend Oscar Hand in, and he was trying a bunch of things, and then he jokingly started playing like a Bo Diddley drum beat just for fun because he thought it was funny, and it sort of just stuck. And as the song built, we realized that it made the most sense to sort of build it to this point where when that chorus does come in, it really just it hits in a way that is, like you said, a complete wall of sound. But I think the biggest thing was just messing with tone.
Sure, and I'll have to listen to that Bo Diddley part because I guess the song sounds like it's from a completely different era than Bo Diddley. I wouldn't instinctively listen for that, but I could totally believe it's there. A bit more of a niche question. I've always been intrigued, creeped out. It depends on the context when you have multiple songs with the same title. So I was kind of amused that Bruce Springsteen had a song called Wrecking Ball around the same time Miley Cyrus did hers. Sarah Bareilles has two songs, Love on the Rocks and Morningside, that coincidentally are not shared titles with Neil Diamond songs. You have a song called Trust in Me, which is the creepy snake song from the Jungle Book. Uh, was that an accident? Because it's a very different song.
Yeah, well, so not a complete accident. Obviously, yeah, I knew the song from the Jungle Book. Um, and when I was coming up with a title that played on it, but also there's a really great Etta James song called Trust in Me that's one of I've always loved. And I really on that one, I wasn't it's weird. Sometimes songs take months to form, but that one it was like one afternoon. Um, I set out to write sort of like a Buddy Holly-esque song, and I ended up coming away with like a John Prine-esque song. But yeah, on that one, I think there's definitely a connection. I've never really thought about it, but I do think that like when I name the songs, there's an element of which all of them are sort of already songs. Like there's already songs for most of them that exist, and it was kind of this thing of like adding to that don't let me grow up thing of like if I name the songs things that are sort of already songs, it adds into that sort of formulation of this is how I got to where I am. Yeah.
Right. Well, looking at the stats from your Spotify, it's been a pretty good year for the record for a debut. At least compared to a lot of indie musicians. Was that a complete accident? Was there a real promotion strategy? I mean, it must be hard during to come out with new music during a pandemic and have so many listeners.
Yeah. Well, so um, the biggest kick that sort of really helped drum up support at the start, I was in a movie in the summer of 2020 called How to Fix Radios. It was just an independent film that some of my friends made. but I allowed them to use some of my music for it. And then somehow they ended up going viral on TikTok. Um, and my music alongside that, sort of the numbers were good at the start because I had sort of the support of my friends and family, but then also this support from the people who had seen the film. And so there was, yeah, for a few months there, the stats were really good, and it sort of dipped off for a little while. But the biggest thing for me was just trying to get on as many playlists as I could, regardless of the size, because that's really where the stats on Spotify specifically come from. Um, I don't know what happened, but this month I went from having like 60 monthly listeners to having 700. So I'll take that.
So the TikTok thing caught me by surprise. So is it totally bizarre, like very modern dancing to this sort of melancholy folk stuff?
Well, see that you would think so, but the it's like we were on this side of TikTok where it was sort of like film TikTok, so it was literally just a video of my friend pitching the movie and saying, "Hey, you should go see the movie," that went viral. I think
I
it
see.
got about 500,000 views, and then yeah, subsequently some other videos of that we'd all put up of like projects we were working on and stuff like that that did a little less well, but still got some traction. Um, but yeah, the TikTok thing is cool. I had a I've had a couple situations, especially last year, where like people would be like, "Hey, are you in this movie?" Which was surreal. Like not fame, but like this weird feeling of like, why do you know me from that? It was a really surreal experience. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess you've already hinted at my next question. So you mentioned before the interview, you're studying film production. Your album is great cover art. You know, it's not just a boring photo of you and your guitar. So I guess you're someone who has an overall multidisciplinary artistic mind.
Yeah, I mean music is my biggest focus for sure. I think that I spend the most time on music, just instinctively. But yeah, I have a real passion for filmmaking too, and for and for photography. I love photography, specifically film photography. And yeah, like I really I'm a really big film fan, and within that, I think they really do go hand in hand. So specifically, I like doing scores for films, and I love writing for films. I think that like writing a screenplay is as close as you can get to writing a song, at least for me, on like the same sort of feeling. Um, and yeah, shout out to my really good friend Bodie Irwin, who lent me his photo to use as the cover for the album for free, which was very kind of him. But yeah, I think that's probably like it all connects with art, for me at least.
Right. And are there particular films you've been watching lately that have been inspirational to you or you feel like aren't getting the attention they deserve?
I mean, this one's kind of, I'm a huge fan of the Before trilogy. Before Sunrise
Right.
specifically is a huge inspiration on my writing and the way, especially when I'm writing love songs. But I think, I mean, lots of movies inspire me. Inside Llewyn Davis is probably the biggest inspiration on like a how to connect film and music level. But really, uh, like almost every film I watch, the thing I'm looking out for most is whether or not the soundtrack and the score are impactful. Yeah, I think um, I'm just trying to think of like films that I've seen recently. I haven't been watching as many movies lately because I've been so busy. But yeah, like those two are two that really I find impactful.
Right. Yeah. Well, I really appreciated how I guess the last round of Oscars because they're the theaters weren't open. It meant the sort of pretend prestige movies that always get nominated didn't exist. So like they nominated actual indie movies
Yeah.
this time around. So I thought that was pretty cool. Uh, but yeah, no, Llewyn Davis is a great example. When I've showed that to, I guess, people who aren't musicians, they don't get it. They find it kind of depressing, and it's an interesting piece of storytelling, right? Because it's circular. Llewyn basically ends up right where he started at the end. So I guess is that what you like about it as a musician?
Yeah, I think there's a scene in that. Well, I love that movie for lots of reasons. The sort of circular nature of it is a big part of it. But for me, the one scene that makes it is when he goes to Chicago and he's playing for the guy. He's playing this beautiful song, and you're sitting there just thinking, wow, like he's pouring his entire heart into it. And then the guy's just like, I don't see money here. And that's what makes that movie for me, because it's just, there's just, I think seeing someone not succeed in the struggle that they're trying to overcome, and seeing someone really just be tired and frustrated by trying to pursue the thing they love is really refreshing in a weird way. Because I think like there's so many movies and also so many just like people who they're like, yeah, well, that success was that it happened, but for every person that happens for, there's 1,000 who it didn't. And and yeah, I think that their stories are arguably way more interesting than the stories of people who become famous. And yeah, I think Inside Llewyn Davis really just does a great job of showing how sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the questions I've been thinking about more lately is sort of, how many of the people who are famous, it really makes sense that they're the 0.1%, and how much of it is luck. So, on the one hand, I've this friend, Sean, I interviewed on the channel a while ago, who's a editor for various science fiction publications, and he said he was surprised that when he got anonymous submissions and he would later learn who they were, quite often the ones he ranked the best did turn out to be the people who were published, who had some success. At the same time, in music, you can do a lot with just 3 chords, right? And there's a lot of people out there who can do that. And that when that movie about the world where the Beatles don't exist, Yesterday, came out a couple of years ago, I felt like that was one of the tensions the writers have. If someone wrote those exact same songs, would that rocket them to the top or not? And because that was a fairly mainstream movie, they played it safe and said yes. But there were a couple scenes at the beginning where they were toying with the idea of saying maybe not. But anyway, I rambled a bit there. I don't know if you
No,
have any
no.
more thoughts on that.
No, I think that that's really insightful. I think, yeah, certainly like there's a lot of famous people who are very, very talented, and who it wasn't about luck necessarily. But I think that like as a film major, I've learned networking is so huge. Like really being open to talking to people and then finding the right people to actually make art with is so important. Yeah, I think about that a lot too, with just directors have their favorite actors and they'll make or break their career. And I think it's really interesting to see how in music, like the way that a producer can affect how someone's career turns out, just in the way that they decide to make their music. Like if something's overproduced or underproduced, it can make or break someone's career, regardless of if the songs are good, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, Hector, this has been great. Would you be able to share a song with us?
This is a new one that I've been working on. I've been in the studio back and forth the last few months working on a new record, and this one hasn't been recorded yet, but I think it probably will be. So. I'm coming home for another weekend, but after that you'll have to wait a couple 100 miles to see my freckled forehead touch the ceiling. I wish there was a way for me to bottle up your smile. I had another dream about you last night, and when I woke without you, it ruined my whole week. Somehow I like the world so much better when it was still just me and you in the living of my sleep. Sarah Ann, you make me a much happier man. And if I'm honest, that does scare me. We began on a stage somewhere between us, so I got pretty used to seeing people staring. Every time I try and cross the county line, I remember the first time that I ever saw you. The train tracks on your teeth and the quiet that you keep makes everyone else fall down that was not you. Sarah Ann, you make me a much happier man. And if I'm honest, that does scare me. We began on a stage somewhere between us, so I got pretty used to seeing people staring. Sarah Ann, you make me a much happier man, but I can't ever let you know it. We began, but I let it slip away again without ever even allowing you to notice. Sarah Ann.
Beautiful. So hope you record that one. At the very beginning, I heard just a pinch of the the melody and vocal stylings of City of New Orleans, but then you very quickly made it your own. So that familiar hook, turning it into something else, great. But Hector, that was excellent. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. So that was my talk with Hector Jenkins. As you know, I can sometimes be a bit of a blabbermouth in these interviews. I suppose it's that I, want to be more Joe Rogan than generic music interviewer type. But Hector was someone who was a lot of fun to talk with because he's, on the one hand, new to this musical career. The ideas are just bursting out of him, but he already has a pretty sophisticated understanding of what it means to collaborate, to make new music and push forward with it. And I can only wish him the best going forward, whether his career finds himself in music, in film, or maybe something else. But whatever it is, I hope it's artistic. Hope you enjoyed the interview too. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.